This week on TWIP, it's a crossover between podcasts. This one, This Week in Photo, and Scott Wyden-Kivowitz and his podcast, Workflows. We're trading places. He's going to interview me. I'm going to interview him. It's a discussion about all things content creation. All that and more is coming your way next this week on TWIP. This is TWIP.
TWIP Workflows crossover. This is a unique thing that we're doing. It's very exciting, new to both of us, and I can't wait to see where this conversation goes. Frederick, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Yeah, I think we're onto something here. We're crossing the flows. We're experimenting with different prompt structures, right? That's what we're doing with this show. And I think we're mixing it up a little bit. We both have a ton of ideas over the different topics that we discussed that we're going to cover in this episode. And yeah, it makes sense. We've got your chocolate, my peanut butter. We'll put them together and we'll see what comes out at the end of the day. At the end of the day, the listeners will benefit because they get to hear a new voice on both of our platforms. And a mixture of ideas. And just real quick before we kick it off, for the TWIP listening audience, just a heads up of what this experiment is about. And I know I probably covered this, future me covered this in the intro for this episode, but I'm going to rehash it just in case that guy dropped the ball. Scott actually had the idea of doing this sort of collaborative podcast episode. And I agreed. I thought, yeah, what a great idea. How come I didn't think about that? And that's where we both get on, talk about the topics that we have outlined, and then syndicate or publish on both platforms. I'm excited to be here.
Crossover. Yeah. It's like Chicago PD meeting Chicago Fire meeting Chicago Med, except it's only two of us.
There you go. Something like that.
It all works. It all works.
Yeah.
You and I have known each other for quite some time, and I'm glad. I've been on your show, I think, once or twice.
Yeah, I think twice.
I can't remember if you were on the last podcast I hosted, but I'm glad that we're doing this. And yes, for all the Workflows listeners, this is a fun thing. If it goes well, hopefully Frederick and I can do more of these, but this is experiment number 1 and we'll see what happens. So
yeah.
With that,
0.
let's dive right in. So this whole conversation that we're about to have is about a variety of different things with the future of photography. We're going to touch on AI and a whole bunch of automations and things like that. The first thing I wanted to discuss was the fact that AI has actually been in our cameras for quite some time at this point.
Yeah.
And I figured it'd be nice to just touch on the different aspects of where AI is in our cameras, whether people realize it or not.
Yeah, it's in several areas in there. One of them out there, the most obvious one is autofocus, and how autofocus is getting better and better is largely attributable to the artificial intelligence or machine learning inside the camera themselves. And what is that? So yeah, great. My camera has AI in it, but does that mean it's an Android? No, it means the makers of the camera taught it to recognize certain things and understand those things and weight them differently in the frame and do things based on that weighting, i.e., a bird in the sky. Maybe that's what they want. Versus in the olden days, right? It was other ways that they detected what the subject was, whether it be motion or contrast. Yeah, those kind of things. Now it can still do those. I'm sure they're still using those, but as they're using all of this stuff in concert together to get that amazing result, like on the Nikon Z9 and the Z8 now, I'm guessing the autofocus of those cameras is just heralded of being borderline magic. Arthur C. Clarke style magic. And then cameras like Lumix on the Panasonic side, which is, I'm an owner of both. In fact, I'm on a Lumix camera right now. But back in the day, and Panasonic is aware of this, one of their Achilles heel weak points has been the focusing on Micro Four Thirds cameras. So add a little AI to the sauce and suddenly you get what photographers have been begging for.
Yeah. I feel like the AI for focusing started with faces, I think was the first. Recognizing overall faces. It worked well because as soon as you return the head, your focus would get a little confused if it was face recognition. Even that's gotten smarter to still follow the face as the face turns, right? Following the head rather than the face. Then it moved into human eyes. It's moved into animal eyes, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
But then moving beyond faces became object detection. So now, as you
Mhm.
said, like birds, full people, so you can detect full people in certain
Yeah.
cameras. My favorite, even though I don't shoot this, but I know there's a lot of, at least there's a lot of Imagen users that I know of, and I'm sure there's a lot of SmugMug users and Flickr users that are doing this, but like car racing, right? So NASCAR, for example, there's now cameras that can detect
Yeah.
objects like cars
Mhm.
driving by
Mhm.
super fast.
Yeah.
Object detection. And then the absolute kicker is what I don't know if Sony's doing it, but I know Canon and Nikon are doing it now, where it's eyeball focus detection. So as you're looking through the EVF, it can detect where your eye is looking and focus on whatever. So instead of you having to hit the autofocus button to focus the camera, it's just focusing on where your eye looks.
You know what?
That
Is
is
that
mind blowing.
new, Scott? Is that new? Because I remember, I think it was Canon. I wanna say
Hmm.
Canon way back in the day developed something, and I don't know if it's still in the cameras, as I don't shoot Canon, I'm not sure what the platform is, but I remember there was this tech where it would look at your eye. It'd be looking like there's a little tiny emitter in the view in the eyepiece
Hmm.
that would essentially it was I think it was smart and smartly executed, but very ham-handed because it was instead of using the artificial intelligence, it was like, "Oh, I know this is an eye and there's a retina and it's
Yeah.
looking over there and,
Yeah.
oh, it's dilated or closed down, so it must be looking at this certain distance." It's not doing
Right.
all that stuff. That one was looking at the whites of the eye.
Hmm.
So if it saw a lot of white in an eye, it knew the eye was probably looking in that direction
Right.
because the retina would have to be over there. Therefore, it could use that information and put the focus area in that area of the screen to give it
Yeah.
a kind of a head start on what you're looking at. I'm not.
Yeah.
I know I'm not doing the technology justice, but that's
Right. Right.
what I. Do you remember that? Do you remember that
I
feature?
do, and
Yeah,
I'm sure it was built on that framework.
yeah.
Now it is what you just described where it pinpointing everything. So, like, the wedding industry now, it's sped up so many photographers in camera workflow because now it's less half touching or less F on buttons or back button focusing.
Or just
Um,
focus in general, right? Just focus
yeah, yeah.
focus. I'm aging myself, but the first camera I owned I didn't even own it. It was an Air Force camera, and the
Mhm,
first camera I was issued was a Nikon F3 manual, right? That
mhm.
thing was full on manual with the focus
Yep.
prism. Your older listeners will understand the focus prism that you had to get it
Yep,
together, and then your image was so you had
yep.
the thing was not to make this a focusing episode, but your skill as a photographer had to be such that you could internalize making sure the shot was sharp, i.e., locked in. If it was moving, that was a whole nother bag of worms because you had to
Yeah,
track it and keep the shutter button down. So it was that along with all the other bits, whether it's composition, exposure, lighting, all that stuff. So all that stuff had to be in play in your head at the
yeah,
moment of capture. And you fast forward to this glorious future we live in, and that part is lifted off of our shoulders. And I don't think it makes people can argue this in the comments or whatever, but I don't think it makes you a better photographer or a worse photographer now that you don't have to worry so much, if at all, about focusing. I think it makes you, if anything, it lifts the weight off of your brain to have to worry about it was that shot in focus that I
right,
thought about the composition and I
right.
wanted that tree there and I wanted this and then I had to interact with the subject and get him or her to
Yeah.
smile and do all these things. Now
I think
focusing is off the table, right?
Yeah, I think the word you just said, interacting with the client more,
Yeah.
is like the key there because now the less that you have to think about, or you're thinking about it, but the less you have to like physically, some of your brain power has to be focused on autofocus, for example, or manual
Yeah.
focus, for example, or
Yep.
changing your shutter, changing your aperture, whatever it is. The less brain power you have to give to that means the more brain power you have to connecting and interacting with your client. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So
um,
it just gets us
yeah,
it just makes us better. Yeah.
yeah,
And the other, I think, just to put another nail in that coffin of that particular bullet
yeah, yeah.
is Apple with their Apple Vision Pro headset that they just
Mhm.
came out with. So I've never touched that thing. I've probably seen as much as anybody else has seen about it, but it knows where you're looking as well, because it's got a
Yeah.
series of cameras and sensors in there that are looking at your
Staring at
eyes,
you.
so that yeah, so it can do all sorts of things like
Yeah.
what are they looking at, what should be in focus, what should not be
Yeah.
in focus, how much processor speed should
Yeah.
I apply to that part of the screen versus where they're not looking. All
Yeah.
that stuff is happening. I gotta imagine those sorts of technologies, much like, I don't know, like when smartphones launched, right? When and sort of started proliferating around the planet and became the
Mhm.
norm, other industries popped up because of smartphones and other technologies, like the miniaturization of compasses to go in the devices, the accelerometer, the altitude sensor, all those things went
Yeah.
in miniaturized on a chip into this device to make that device possible. This
Yeah.
new device, the Apple Vision Pro, has other technologies in there that I gotta imagine are gonna find their way into other industries,
Yes.
some existing, some that we don't even know about yet are gonna show
Yeah.
up because of what Apple and their trillions of dollars are developing into this kind of new platform. So
Yeah.
exciting.
Not to get too sidetracked on, like, outside of photography, but imagine
Mhm.
that technology that's in these VR goggles, because
Yeah.
that's what I'm gonna call 'em. Yeah, imagine that they're now in your car and you look off the road and now your car is yelling at you for looking off the road.
Yeah.
Like,
Cars do that
so
now. They do that now.
do
They have that built into the Teslas and many of the electric,
to
so when they're self-driving in there.
yeah, true. Yeah.
Yeah, you're paying attention to the road, which I don't like. I don't it's one thing to have that in my camera and to assist me with making a better photo.
When
It's
your life's
another
on the
thing to
line.
yeah, to have well, yeah, I mean, I know it's for safety and everything, but I just
Yeah.
yeah, I feel weird when I feel like, okay, someone's watching me, but I'm driving, even if it's an entity, an AI or my
Yeah.
car or whatever for my own good.
Yeah.
It feels a little invasive. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
That's just
mind
me.
the car looking at the road for me, but I don't want it looking
Yeah.
at me.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then
so moving on to
when
the
you
next
doze off and hit somebody, then you're like, "Okay, why didn't you tell me?"
yeah, exactly, exactly. Damn you, car. So, there's a bunch of other newer AI technology that's making its way into apps. Some of again, have existed for some time that I think are, for one example, being something very beneficial to stock photographers, commercial photographers, landscape photographers. Some cases, potentially, wedding photographers could utilize this, but there's XR Photo, XR Search, XR Photo, like this company
Mhm.
who makes it scans your photos. The XR Search is a Lightroom plugin. XR Photo is a standalone app, and it basically looks at your photos, analyzes what the photo is, and creates keywords for you on a variety of factors. And On One just came out with theirs on. We're recording this on June 21st. That's a Wednesday. On Monday, what was it, the 19th? On One came out with their own version of that, which is a standalone app. There's no Lightroom plugin, at least right now, and it also does the same thing where it just scans your photos for keywords and adds the photos to the metadata. You can then load it up in Lightroom, and now you've got all those keywords in Lightroom or in
Yep.
Photoshop or wherever. And I feel like I've used both at this point. I've only used On Ones for a couple of days at this point, but it's amazing. As somebody who loves landscape photography, I find it amazing how accurate and interesting the keywords can come up with.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts
Yeah.
on those?
I agree. Yeah, I know the folks over at Exire from the top on down, the great
Mhm.
folks that are genuine folks that are working on genuine software that solves a genuine, I don't know if you want to call it problem, but an annoyance to photographers,
Yes,
and that's
annoyance for
that whole
sure.
keywording. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's my annoyance with keywording comes in when I see friends of mine, I don't know, Photo Joseph or somebody like that, who's all in and meticulous on their keywording and the hierarchies and all that stuff, and everything's perfect. He can find the hair on a dog from 19 whatever,
Yeah.
but yeah, so in step a company like Exire and now On One with these a way to use artificial intelligence. In this case, AI is a weird term, right? Because it's
Yeah.
thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
It covers a whole bunch of things, but everyone thinks it's only one thing. In the case of this, what they're doing with the keywording is, again, it's back down to machine learning, i.e.,
Yep.
brute force. Feed the machine a bunch of photos so that it knows what's what. And then when it sees something that looks like that, apply that tag to it. That's
Yeah.
all it's doing. So if it sees a red dog or a cat or
Mhm.
something, it's going to go, oh, that is a cat.
Yeah.
Okay. And here's the tree for cat,
Yeah.
feline,
Yep.
claws, blah. So it's going to
Yeah.
put all that stuff in there for you automatically. well beyond anything that you or I would ever feel like or want to do as a human. We can, through this kind of menial grunt work, over to the AI and have it do it more
Exactly.
efficiently than we could ever conceive of doing. And that's what it's for. It's brilliant. I did a whole tutorial for the Exire folks. I think
Mhm.
they may still have it on their site, where and I walked through the software and demoed all the different pieces of how it works and how it can fit in.
Yeah.
And it's magical, man. It is really magical just to be able to see. And if you've been shooting for as long as I have, you probably have a library full of
Oh, yeah.
images, whether they're personal or kids and
Yep.
or work or whatever. But to be able to, with the power of a piece of software, after it indexes everything, to go in and say, yeah, show me every photo from when I went to
Yeah.
Las Vegas. Boom.
Yep.
Okay, show
Well,
me
I
every photo for when
yeah.
I went to the MGM Grand, or every
Yeah.
photo that has it's yeah, it's
Yeah,
very
a real world example of how I use Xire while working at Imagen, actually. So I've been at Imagen now for we're approaching 2 years already, and it was almost a year ago in a couple weeks. So we're coming up to July 4th to Independence Day here in the US,
mhm.
and our social media manager was like, "Hey, does anybody have fireworks photos?" I was like, "I do." So I loaded up Lightroom and I was using Xire search,
Yep.
and I just literally just searched for the word fireworks, and I exported every photo that I've ever shot of fireworks ever into a bunch of JPEGs for him to choose from. Took me 2 seconds, and it was only due to having all my keywords in place thanks to Xire search. So, real
Yeah,
world, like,
yeah.
I had a need, and it solved it.
That's why when people complain about, "Oh, AI is gonna take our jobs," and blah, 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 and yeah, yeah, some jobs, absolutely. It's gonna eat them and spit them out.
Yeah,
That we can see it already. I'd be terrified if I were in some industries that are gonna be affected by this, whether it be people that write stuff or even as we see things unfold, even in the future, I predict we're gonna see certain industries, like even maybe headshot photography taking a
mhm,
hit, because at a certain point, you're gonna be able to get a scan of yourself, a highly
yeah,
accurate scan of yourself, that
yep,
then you'll be able to just say, "Hey, put me in a Corvette flying down a desert highway, wearing a red scarf, flying in the wind."
yep,
And there you are, photorealistic you. So there's these
yeah,
things. I feel like those kind of jobs or those kind of tasks are in the crosshairs of this AI stuff. But then there's the other things also that get painted with the same AI brush, like keywording and these more mundane things that
yeah,
we are, oh, thank you, AI, for doing that.
yeah, yeah,
Or
same,
I'm a Grammarly holic, the app Grammarly?
same.
I
See?
use it to appear more intelligent than I am every day. Un and I'm not embarrassed to say that. Every day I use it. It's great.
Right now,
Fantastic.
we have Grammarly is in attached to Frederick's brain, and right now we're hearing the intelligent Frederick, but once we remove that chip, he goes back to
It's low key. It is low key Mrs. Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell
the
my English one of my English teachers in high school, and I remember, yeah, she would correct me on certain grammar mistakes all the time. Oh,
Mm,
when you do a quotation mark, and you're quoting at the end of a sentence, the period needs to be inside the quotation mark, not outside, even though it looks like
yep,
it's things like that, or this should be hyphenated, or that should be, or
yeah,
even the dreaded, where does the apostrophe go?
mhm,
Especially when their name ends in S and you're talking about something that's not those
yeah,
kind of things that trip up people. Grammarly catches those
yeah,
for me. And over
100%.
time, if it catches them enough, I'm like, oh, I don't make the mistake anymore. So I don't make the mistake of putting the period outside of the quotation mark anymore, because Grammarly has hit me over the head so many times. It's
Yeah,
now I do it right. So I would argue that I'm smarter, or at least better grammatically, than I was a year ago, because of using this software or using
yeah,
these tools like Grammarly. It's crazy.
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. You brought up the headshot thing. We're gonna get to generative imaging. Do you wanna talk about
Yeah.
that now and go back to the other 2 topics, or do you wanna
Yeah.
wait and
Why
come
not?
back to Alright, so generative imaging, right? Generative AI images, as
Hmm.
officially termed or whatever, I don't know. I am I have a love-hate relationship with these. I can find them to be useful. The whole headshot thing, there's a website that exists. I tried it. You pay 20 bucks or whatever, you upload 20 or however 20 to 50 something photos of yourself,
Hmm.
and then it literally creates headshots for you.
Yeah.
And
Lenza AI is the I think that's one of the tools
Th
that does that, yeah.
that's one of the tools. There's actually one dedicated to just headshots.
Oh, is it?
And
Oh, I need
yeah,
to know the name of that. I wanna try it.
yeah, I'll look it up when we're done, but it does a decent job. It still doesn't look real. Some of them don't even look like you, but it does a decent
Yeah.
job. In fact,
Right.
at Shutterfest, like, you go to a trade show, you go to WPPI, you go to Imaging, whatever, there's always banners of the speakers and of the sponsors and stuff like that. At Shutterfest, on the trade show floor, they had banners, and this year, all the banners were of the speakers as AI. And
Oh,
it
wow.
was the talk of the show because 9 times out of 10, it didn't look like the speaker at all.
Yeah.
So, it's
Maybe it
interesting.
looked like what the speaker wished they looked like.
Yeah. I've played around with a lot of the generative AI imaging tools, and I've seen workflows like Sam Hurd, for example, just put out a YouTube video showing how he's automating going from his Canon camera to Dropbox or to his FTP server, and then Midjourney's taking that and creating 4 potential variations on the photo and putting in a Dropbox folder and within a minute, all in real time. And so it gives him to be able to, like, shoot with a client and then see a variation of what maybe he can try something else.
Yeah.
And so there's potential really cool uses for it. I'm not a fan of just the create this image and it outputs it, right? I
Ah,
do the whole Photoshop thing where it expand the scene, let it take your photo and some AI and fill in, but
there's so much to unpack there, and
I
thank you for
know.
bringing that thank you for bringing it up. Like I said, I told you before, I just got back from, Infocom in
Mhm.
Orlando. I did a couple of I sat on a panel that was talking about the future of streaming and how AI might affect that, and then I did a talk on how basically it was my workflow and different ways that I'm using AI to enhance my workflow that I wasn't doing a year or so ago. It's the on the generative side of things, like I said in the talk, I'm cautiously optimistic, but I lean more towards optimistic on
Yeah.
where this stuff is taking us, and heavily more towards optimistic, but with a healthy dose of pessimism and fear, right? To keep us alive, right?
Fear,
But
fear.
yeah, yeah. But, that when I look at this stuff, especially the generative stuff, I can't help but be excited. To go back a little bit to your thoughts about just headshot photography not being there yet, where people upload a series of images and it does the
Yeah.
thing. We're in pre-alpha, I think, for
Yeah.
this stuff. We literally a lot of people don't we're at the point now, like right now, you'd be hard pressed to find a person on the planet that doesn't know what an iPhone is. It wasn't always that way. It was
Right.
at a certain point, there were just a certain group of people, insiders that knew about it or knew it was coming or whatever. Even after all of Apple's launch plans or whatever, there's a certain contingent of the population on the planet who are like, what's an iPhone? And now, of course, everybody knows. We've been marinating in it for years now. So everyone knows what an iPhone is. And it has advanced to the point where these things, our phones are doing things that where we never conceived that they would go, right? They've birthed billion-dollar industries that we had no idea we needed 10, 15 years ago, like Uber and Lyft and those kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I look at AI, especially on the generative side of things, as being that we're at launch at the beginning of all this. So you extrapolate out 10, 15 years or so, that's where photographers I think need to be looking, like skating to where the puck is going to be. So if you look at where this stuff is pointing to right now with what Meta is trying to do, what Apple is trying to do, you zoom out a little bit and look at what's happening with crypto and NFT and how that's going to work into this, and Midjourney and Photoshop with Firefly and how that's going to work into this new kind of these mini worlds that are being built. Look at what Nvidia is doing
Mhm.
with their hardware. It's hard to think of a scenario when super realistic Unreal Engine quality avatars of our persons are not going to be one of the next kind of Uber or holy grail companies where it's okay. Yeah, you can instead right now it's okay. Upload a bunch of photos, 2D crappy photos of yourself, and the AI will do some interesting tricks with it. Right? That's where we are now.
Mhm.
Imagine the world where you can go to a facility somewhere. I don't know. Maybe it's a photo studio of the future and get a full-on perfect scan of your entire body as it stands right now. Of course, you'll be able to make modifications to it if you don't like the way you look or whatever, but you'll have that data at a super high resolution on a super high resolution scan that then you can do other things with. Like I said, put yourself in different situations, show up in Zoom calls, render a headshot for whatever. Will headshots even be necessary if somebody can just call up your virtual profile on LinkedIn of the future? It's those things. When I look at these technologies, Adobe and their forward thinking to put generative AI as a tool within Photoshop to give us a
Yep.
taste of what could
Brilliant.
happen. Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Yep.
And it's scaring the crap out of a ton of people, I think,
Yeah.
because rightly
Yeah.
so. Headshot photographers, commercial photographers, like in that
Yeah.
same ilk, Scott. So the same ilk of, okay, I can go to a facility and get myself scanned in. Now I can put myself in whatever situation. I don't have to
Mhm.
worry about going to get a photo shoot. All my family's been scanned too. So I could do a Christmas photo that's appropriate for the time. And we're all in Christmas suits. I could generate that if I want to. Now, of course, yeah, you probably want to just shoot that because it's personal, but you could generate that. I think about it from the impact on commercial photography, though. So
Mhm.
what happens when company A decides, hey, we have this widget that we need a bunch of photos for the website, and they
Yeah.
just get that widget scanned in, much like
Yep.
car companies are doing today. They just
Yep.
they have full 3D representations of their cars. They can do whatever the heck they want to do with. Well, imagine when that's the whole world can do that with
Yeah.
anything, right?
And yep.
Yeah, it changes. It changes a lot.
Yeah, it is definitely a little bit of caution, but a little bit of fear, but a whole lot of optimism.
Yeah.
It's a definitely mixed emotions when it comes to generative AI, but I am 100% in agreement with you. I think what Adobe has done so far, it's the natural progression of here's what people are doing to manipulate photos already. Let's give them this AI to just take it to the next level and make it easy instead of having to go to Midjourney and do this to then go back to here, then go back to here. Just have it in
Yeah.
one place and have it easy throughout the software. I think it's definitely a way to go. I still think, yes, it's beta, but it's definitely still
Mhm.
alpha. There's a way to go. I put out a video a few weeks back. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly with Photoshop's generative AI that's built in,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
showed I showed what it did great and what it didn't do so great.
Yeah.
Like when I asked it to replace a sock with a bird and it made a sock bird puppet, and I was like, "It's not really what I asked it to do. It's funny, but it's not
Maybe it has a
anyway."
sense of humor.
Yeah, maybe it does, but so let's go to something a little more less scary in some cases, very productive, very workflow oriented,
Sure.
and actually happening now, which is
Yeah.
cool. Camera to cloud. So
Yes.
this is something that is being pioneered and spearheaded by um, Fujifilm,
Mhm. Mhm.
Imagen, SmugMug. Who else is in on? Skyloom is in on this,
Mhm.
um, and of course Frame.io, which is Adobe. They're
Yeah.
in on this. So this is something that was demoed lightly at Imaging USA, and by lightly, informal, but they still put on a presence. And then more heavily demoed at WPPI,
Yeah.
and it was so cool. So the concept is, and even though it's a proof of concept, it's happening. Like this is
Mhm.
happening. And again, it started with Fujifilm. There's a good chance, very good chance that a lot of cameras like Panasonic and Nikon and Canon will be doing stuff like this. But you shoot in camera with right now the Fujifilm cameras, two of them that do this.
Yeah.
The photos go directly to Frame.io as well as the memory card. So you got it in both places. You got your raw file on the memory card. You got a raw file that went to Frame.io directly. No phone needed in between. It is then culled and edited by Imagen's AI, right? So right now it's being edited by Imagen. Culling can happen in the future just by flipping a switch, right? But it's being edited by Imagen again through the cloud, and then it's being sent to a SmugMug gallery. My favorite part: the raw file sent to SmugMug with the XMP of the edits sent to SmugMug and the outputted JPEG
Yeah.
sent to SmugMug in a SmugMug gallery, ready for your client to see and order prints from.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is. It feels like that's the holy grail, right? For me, it feels like that is the holy grail that a lot of photographers in a lot of different industries have been chasing for a while.
Yeah.
Photojournalists, for example, and
Yeah.
sports photographers, like you're at the game. In the olden days, you were shooting film, so there was that gap, right? And then when it went digital, it was the gap of the time that you can get over to some place to go through your images and upload them to AP or wherever. And now with this camera to cloud piece, we're removing that last bit out of there as
Yeah.
well, which I think which is a couple of topics to touch on there. The first one is, yeah, the convenience and
Mm.
the way that I feel like they're designing it, the technology to work. And yeah, for folks that don't know, just to set the stage here, my company, This Week in Photo, the podcast, the educational resource, et cetera, community, was acquired last year in 2022 by SmugMug to go along with Flickr and SmugMug as one of the three brands over there. I had a heads up that this was coming, right? The whole Fuji and camera to cloud partnership between SmugMug and Fuji. And I look at this and I think, okay, at its core, when I first saw it, I was like, okay, at its core, we're replacing that long tether tools cable that I
Yeah.
have when I'm shooting tethered and I got somebody in the studio and I shoot it and they can see it on
Yeah.
the screen. And oh
Mhm.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, but maybe try
Yeah.
not to smile, whatever. So that's the flow I was thinking. So that bandwidth of squeezing that JPEG, that XMP sidecar file, that raw file, all the
Yeah.
data is, in the case of tether tools, is going through that cable, that orange cable to your computer. In the case of this, it's
I
going
love
to
that
the
orange cable, by the
cloud.
way.
I love my orange cables, yeah. I had to throw one away yesterday because it was old. It was an old connector. But instead, it's going to the cloud and then
Mm.
coming down to wherever, based on rules or where you want it to go. Like you
Yeah.
go to a SmugMug gallery that has certain permissions and
Yeah.
access privileges set on it already. For me personally, that's scary because I don't. I want it to go up there for me, but very rarely are my shots ready for human consumption right out of camera. I need to do a little.
Right.
I gotta put some Frederick seasoning on them before other humans see them. So there's that. But if you're doing photojournalism, you're on the field somewhere, and the news needs to happen
Yeah.
right now. Boom, and it's on the editor's desk, and they can make the
Yeah.
decision on what goes where. I think it's brilliant. This isn't this unless I'm missing something. This isn't necessarily brand new technology. I think the tech is new, what they're building. I have no idea
Mhm.
what magic they put in the software and hardware to make this work. But you remember back in the day, there was a company called iFi. You remember
Yeah.
iFi?
Yep. The
Yeah,
memory card did the work.
memory card.
Yeah.
They had Wi-Fi. They had squeezed a
Yeah.
Wi-Fi transmitter
Yep.
onto a little SD card that you'd stick
Yeah.
in your camera, and it would do something similar. You'd shoot, it
Yeah.
would record to the chip, to the memory of the card, but then
Yeah.
also go to iFi's servers, which
Mhm.
would then, based on your rules, syndicate that image out to different areas. The JPEG,
Yeah.
of course, right? But
Yes.
you could have it go to Flickr, you could have it go to
Yep.
SmugMug, you could have it go to wherever, all
Yeah.
these different places at the point of capture. But it was
Yep.
buggy and it was slow
Yes.
and it was
Yeah.
JPEG only and it was slow
Yeah.
and it was slow.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
it
I
didn't
think the
work. It
magic
didn't work.
I think that yeah, I think the magic of what Fujifilm has done is they built it with, I believe it's Wi-Fi 6E
Mhm.
or whatever the latest Wi-Fi is, so it's like the
Yeah.
fastest possible Wi-Fi right now, and because it's built into the camera itself, not a memory card, it doesn't lose any of that transmit data that a memory card would give, so you're getting the absolute fastest it can possibly process through the Wi-Fi. So if you're on a Wi-Fi 6 network, you could potentially get almost a gigabyte speed of transfer through Wi-Fi, right? Yeah, that is a beautiful thing. And just to touch on the whole wanting to add the Frederick special sauce after you shoot the photos, is that's where Imagen comes in, right? Imagen learns how you edit. You're getting it to your SmugMug gallery, but you're actually getting it edited the same way you would. So
Yeah.
that's the beautiful part. But
Right.
I have one of the Fuji prototypes, the Fujifilm prototypes.
Oh, cool.
I
Nice.
I haven't fully tested it as far as can I choose which photos go? Like, but at the same time, do I want to choose which photos go? Because then I'm slowing myself back down again. You know what I mean?
I want
Like,
the choice. I want to be able to make the choice of whether I
yeah,
want everything that every time I press the shutter, whatever you record, put
yeah,
that somewhere. Or I think what iFi did back in the day, if I'm remember, it's coming back to me. Like on the Nikon, I shoot Nikon. So on the
me
Nikons
too.
at least, there's a lock button on there where you can actually
Right.
lock an image. So
Yeah.
you could set it so it would only send up the images that you locked, which was
Right.
cool, right? Because you could be
Yep.
shooting, you're like, yeah, that one needs to go. Okay, no, this one needs to go. Or later when you're reviewing, you could pick and have those automatically
Yeah.
go up. So something like, I think it's not a one size fits all. It's got to be a situational type thing. But the speed, that I think that's the part where I need to see this work. I need to
Yeah.
try it in person on
Mhm.
something that's mission critical to see where the holes are. 'Cause
Right.
that's the only time you'll see if it's
Well,
actually
yeah.
viable to
I
put
can
it
tell you
into battle.
at Imaging and at WPPI, which doesn't have great Wi-Fi on the trade
Right.
show floor and around the hotel, right?
Any trade show.
At Imaging, I think they had about, I wanna say 15 prototypes around the
Mhm.
trade show,
Mhm.
all people shooting all at once, and at WPPI, it was even more, it was probably over 20 prototypes all at once, and they were constantly going and showing the results,
Well,
even with
Scott,
the
you've played with it. It's a great person to ask this question to. So you've seen
Yeah,
it in action, you've played with
yeah,
it. You mentioned briefly earlier that your phone, you don't need the phone. And I think you were
right?
saying that more from the standpoint of you don't need to pair and then copy from the camera to your phone and then
Correct.
send it somewhere that way. But it is still using your phone, right?
No, it's
For
connecting
bandwidth.
directly. No,
So
it
is
doesn't. It
there's a
goes
cellular chip inside these Fuji cameras that
No, it's Wi-Fi. It's Wi-Fi.
also,
Um,
so there's a Wi-Fi chip inside it, which means it needs to connect to the local Wi-Fi and
correct.
send that way. So you're under control of whatever Wi-Fi connection that you're connected to.
Correct.
But like you
Correct.
said, in the case of a trade show, everybody and their mama is connected to that
Yeah,
Wi-Fi,
to the really
so it's
horrible Wi-Fi.
saturated.
Yeah.
And if it still worked in that situation,
Yeah.
then I think we got something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
And keep in
okay,
mind, if you're let's go back to the NASCAR thing. You're shooting
yeah,
NASCAR, maybe you've got yourself a 5G hotspot and it's
yeah,
only you.
which I need.
And
Yeah, I need to get
and
one
now
of
you're
those.
good, right? And
Yeah.
I had to double check. I have the camera packed right now because I'm gonna be using it next week, but I think I'll have to double check. I think it might have an Ethernet port as well, but I have to double check. So,
Oh,
in the grip, because there's a grip too.
the camera itself's gonna like, oh, wow. Okay.
I think the grip might have it because the one that they gave me has a grip attached. So I have 3 batteries at once for the camera.
If that's
Um,
true, double check that, because if that's true
you're
and you
talking
can
now you have
plug
gigabit.
you could plug, and especially if they're doing, power over Ethernet as well. So if you can bring in an Ethernet cable and have your camera charged at the same time and basically tethered, and whatever it
Yeah,
shoots goes back, you basically have a remote camera at that
true,
point where you
true.
can set it up and just go to
Yeah,
town
yeah,
wherever you happen to be, as long as you have that connection. But
yeah. I'll double check, but yeah,
having the Wi-Fi connection is I guess that's the weak link, right? For now,
yeah.
right? So
For now, yeah,
you need to have one of those pucks or whatever to give you that 5G wherever, or a Starlink account or something, so that you could shoot and share, but you need, it's not magic. It's not going to create something from nothing. So you need Wi-Fi access in order to make this work, which I think
yeah,
more and more is becoming ubiquitous. A lot of today's
yeah.
cars have Wi-Fi built into them, right? So
Exactly, exactly.
yeah,
The future's it's here.
yep.
As we get closer to wrapping up, the next thing
Oh,
we wanted to ready. The next thing we wanted to touch on was like automation that we're seeing in album and book designs. There's a bunch of and this whole conversation. Yes, we started with AI. We've been talking about AI, but a lot of this is just automation. Automation makes our lives simpler, no matter what it is. I don't know. I can program my garage door so that when I get home, it recognizes I'm home and then my garage door opens.
yeah,
Automation is beautiful. I don't do that because I don't want somebody random just walking into my garage, but
yeah.
it's
It's a
possible.
thing.
So anyway,
Oh, it's a thing.
yeah, album and book design. There's a bunch of different tools out there that do album and book design. Even now, some of these companies are starting to do social design as well, social media design, using their same software they built for album design to now do social design. So, what are your thoughts on using these sort of tools to do client books, to do personal books, to do wedding albums, whatever it is? Yeah, what do you think about those?
Brilliant. It's brilliant and much needed. It's another thing, right? I know a lot of photographers that I know will say, "Yeah, I got to have my fingers on everything and I have to build my layouts and only
Yeah,
I know how to do this and that's part of my sauce."
yeah,
Sure, for those people, this is not for them, because they find happiness in building the ship in the bottle, right? They find
Yeah.
gratification in the journey, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course. But for the other people that find that drudgery, that kind of work drudgery, I'm not creative. I don't know if I should have one shot on this page or three,
Yeah.
or in composition, she's looking that way. Should she be looking towards the seam of the book?
Right.
All these decisions that the software already knows, and it can
Yeah.
do that. And if the software can look at the shot too and place it in a frame on the page correctly, i.e., not cutting people's heads off and doing all of the right stuff. At the very least, it gives you hours and hours of your day back when it
Yeah.
comes to doing this kind of layout. And at the end of the day, you still have control over it because you're finished and you're like, oh, yeah, I probably should put Aunt Jenny in that spot and let's move that
Yeah.
one. Or maybe this one would be better as a full page. But it gives you a brilliant head start, much like Chat
Yeah.
GPT, right? If
Yep.
you got to, like for me, I had to write my intro for this last conference. I could have written it myself or copy and pasted one of my old ones and changed it or done whatever. But you release Chat GPT on it and it pulls something out that only needs a few minor
Touch
changes and
back.
tonal updates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go fix that for
Yeah.
me. Yeah. My Chat
Yeah.
GPT dog. Same thing for album design, these kinds of things. Just to The whole point of technology, one of the main, not the only singular point, but one of the main points of technology is to make our lives easier, to free us up to do the core thing that we enjoy doing. That's what it is. All this other stuff that's hanging around, like in photography, our core goal is to tell stories or create images that others enjoy. That's it. And
Yeah.
everything between that finished bit and what we see in our mind's eye is resistance, right? It's okay, I gotta understand how focal lengths work. Okay, I gotta understand this. Oh, half press to focus. Oh, focus area this. Am I shooting RAW or JPEG? Am I shooting high enough resolution? Oh, I have my images. Now I gotta build an album from them. I gotta figure out the software to build the albums to give to my. All that stuff is drudgery in the middle. And when software can pop in there and say, "Hey, Frederick, let me take that off your plate, man. You look like you're stressed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please take it. You can do
Yeah.
it better than I can. You take it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
check your work, but you take it, and
Yeah.
we'll keep pressing forward." So
Yeah.
no, I think we're at the beginning of those as well. Because as things change and technologies change and new tools pop up for us as content creators to use, so will the demand for how you present the final output change
Yep.
as well. And these companies will also hopefully follow suit and keep giving us great things. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
I
bullish
think
on the whole thing.
I think one of the important words that you just used was layout, right? Whereas a lot of album and book design tools and software, they use templates where it's
Mm-hmm.
here's your starting point, drag your photos in, or just add all, and that's it, right? And then you have to go
Mm-hmm.
and rearrange. Whereas the more modern solutions, the more intelligent ones, they're analyzing your photos ratings, they're analyzing the times of when the photos were captured, they're analyzing the aesthetics of which way they're looking, if they're color or black and white, and then they're laying it out in a way that makes sense based on those photos, not just templatizing
Yeah,
your design. And I think that's
which is
where, and
brilliant.
again, as you said, you can adjust, but it's giving you that starting point that's more personal to what you actually shot and not
Yeah.
just the template.
Yeah.
It's-
And if these softwares can either through input from you or just learning over time, figure out what your preferences are.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
Scott always does X, Y, and Z. So I'm just going to assume that he wants to do X, Y, and Z with these photos, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So if it has that level of ability to infer what the user wants to, then yeah, these tools become like little assistants for us to
Yeah.
let us
Or
do more with less time.
yeah. Or Scott, for some reason, you keep putting the person with the seam directly down the person's face. Stop doing it. I'm not going to let you do it
Right.
anymore.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely. Yeah,
prohibit me from doing stupid things.
it's interesting you say that. One of the things I was speaking with the Exciter folks on, and one of the things
Mhm.
that they're working on, actually, and it's public, so I can say it, is the idea of using artificial intelligence. And this is going to be controversial. Using artificial intelligence to judge photography contests.
That's
Imagine
going to be
that.
very
So
Yeah.
positives and negatives, right? So
Yeah.
on the positive side, sure, it's a photo contest. You can give it the parameters of the contest. You can do all the rules can be baked in so that anything that doesn't adhere to the rules of the contest, immediately rejected. What a
Mhm.
great filter, right? Instead of us, this was supposed to be a contest about flowers. Why is there a car in here with
Yeah.
a flower in this?
As a first pass, I can see
Yeah,
that being helpful, just so I don't have to look at non-flower photos for a flower
correct.
contest.
But that's low
I
hanging
c
fruit, right? That first
Yeah,
filter to
yeah,
reject things that don't adhere to what the contest is about. The
yeah.
second level is, like you're saying, these AIs understand lighting, composition, exposure, to some degree creativity, arguably, right? They can hopefully tell what is a good photograph. Again, subjective, right? And
Mhm.
controversial. What is a quote good photograph versus what is a quote bad photograph, and say, okay, this one can go forward to the next stage because of these
Yeah.
reasons. This one cannot. So yeah, I think though the tech can be used in some uses to be a standalone judge of a group of photos to say out of all these photos, these three are the best. So winner,
Mhm.
and I'm going to rank them like this. So you can do that
Yeah.
instantly, I think. Should we do it? No, I don't think so. I think the way the technology should be used is for one, I don't want a robot telling me what's good or not, right? I really value the opinions of other people and other humans that know photography, right? So I want that in there, not
Yeah.
some machine learned amalgam of data that you apply to my photo. I want subjectivity
Yeah.
when people are looking at my photos. So under that light, I think it's these those kinds of technologies will very clearly have a dial of how much you want their input, but they will be at the beginning of the flow. So maybe even
Yeah.
at ingest, when you upload a photo
Right.
instantly, wouldn't it be great for the software,
Yeah.
the page that you're
Denied
uploading
it's not a
from,
flower.
to tell you and why?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, to tell you,
Yeah.
no, this does not fit the
Yeah.
criterion of this, the blah blah blah. Here's a
Yep.
reminder of the rules. Boom, go
Yeah. So
for it.
so
Right.
that I could see being very useful. To me, as I'm somebody who I don't like photo contests personally. I don't
Hmm.
submit to photo contests because I don't enjoy them. Um, um, but to me, if I was to submit to a photo contest, I would want to be told ahead of time, we are using AI to either prevent inaccurate submissions or whatever you want to call it, or I would want to be told your photos are being judged by AI, not by
Yes,
humans.
hundred
Because
percent.
that makes a big difference of whether somebody's going to submit or not, for sure.
No,
Um,
100%, yeah.
because
Yeah, it should be
yeah,
I think it should be disclosed wherever used, to be honest with you. I
yes,
think it should wherever AI is being implemented to a degree, right? Like, I
mhm,
don't need to know that it's helping me. I'm sitting in a public space inside and AI is helping regulate the temperature in that room. I don't need to know that
right,
level, but if it's something that's more substantive, like it's judging a photo contest or it wrote some copy that I'm reading that I could make the assumption was written by a human, I feel like right now at this stage in time, I want some sort of marker on there that says this was at least partially assisted by artificial intelligence or written completely by artificial intelligence. Same with images. I want, as Midjourney and all of these generative AI technologies get better and better, the distinction between what is a real photograph and what doesn't exist in the world anyway is
yeah,
becoming harder and harder to discern. So I don't even know if this is possible, but I want some sort of marker on images or somewhere on a page that where necessary, not always, but where necessary, that gives me a hint of, oh, this AI was involved in this composition.
yeah,
If it makes sense, right? If
mhm,
for example, here's where it would make sense. I'm looking at a magazine, and who reads magazines here? But I'm looking at a magazine and there's a shot of some delicious chocolate cake in there for a Betty Crocker ad, right? And the whole thing could be AI generated. I have no idea if it was or not because it looks
right.
photorealistic, looks delicious, and all that. If it was generated by AI because it's a cake that they're trying to get me to buy or a cake mix, I want
It
to
should be
know.
disclosed. Yeah,
I wouldn't disclose it. If it's just a photo of a birthday party with a kid in there and there's a cake on the table and it's not about the cake, then I don't care. It could be that cake could be AI generated. I don't care. It's in
yeah,
service of the story. But I think we need a
yeah,
level of disclosure and genuineness as we start to move forward with this stuff. And it
yeah. Yeah, I think if it does get incorporated into magazines like that, it's going to quickly filter out the ethical versus non-ethical publications for sure.
Yeah. Hmm.
The ones who don't disclose when it comes to important things like an ad, for example.
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
like to see a whole here's an idea. Maybe you could do this. I would like to see a whole satirical AI-driven magazine, much like The Onion, but AI-driven with like fake news stories, but
Everything.
in
Yeah.
AI-generated photographs to go along
Yeah.
to illustrate it. I wanna see that. That'd be
That
interesting.
yeah, someone's gonna do it. It's only a matter of time before somebody does that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is there anything as that's to wrap things up, is there anything going on with over at TWIP, at Flickr, at SmugMug, anything that you wanna share that is going on your side of things?
Not particularly. One thing I would just throw out there, and I have a question to throw back at you. One thing I would throw out there is about Flickr, right? I've been talking
Mhm.
since the acquisition happened about a year ago. I've been talking a lot about Flickr and speaking with a lot of different people about Flickr. And the general consensus is, oh, Flickr, they're still alive, or it's either that or I still use Flickr and I've been using Flickr since the
Yeah.
beginning of time, and I have no intention on stopping using Flickr because it
Mhm.
is my operating system for my photography or sharing my photography. One of the things and I was in that first group. I've kept since 2008. I've had an active Flickr account and I've had an active Flickr group. My Flickr group for This Week in Photo has over 100,000 people in there. It's not. I think it has over 100,000, maybe 100,000 images. I have to look, but it's not insignificant the number
Mhm.
of people that are active inside of Flickr. And what I would encourage folks to do is do what I did. So at one point I was like, okay, let me bear down and get reacquainted with how Flickr works
Mm.
because I had fallen off the path. I was one of the early users, 2008, right, of Flickr. And I remember how I used it then and why I fell in love with it then. And where social media and image sharing veered off to, right or wrong, is different than what Flickr laid out as the path. And Flickr laid out this whole idea of groups and
Yeah.
individuals that are communicating about a particular type of photography, genre of a subgenre of photography. And there's a giant group around it that love that and they interact with each other. So the community associated with that and that feedback, I feel like is part of what's missing with the hashtags and the likes and all that of
Yeah.
today. Just
Yeah.
that, just like I remember back in the day, I was living in Los Angeles. I wanted to be a headshot. I wanted to start shooting headshots, and I did. So I was shooting headshots for actors and actresses down there. And as a new guy to Flickr, I was like, okay, I have this set of photos that I did of this particular person. Let me just upload them all to Flickr and let the community tell me which one is best. And that's
Right.
the way I used it, almost like as an AI, right? Upload
Yeah.
everything. And then we evolved past that with 500px and those kind of initiatives where it was only upload the best of the best and get
Right.
feedback on that. So I
Yeah.
applaud that direction, but the lack of community is what's I feel like missing in a ton of photography today. This is why I started up the TWIP community because there's the whole part of photography is just interacting with other people. It's not a sport where you can just go shoot and enjoy the fruits of your labor and then go on to the next thing. It is conversational, it is educational, it's psychological, it's all
Yeah.
these things that only a community can bring out. So, yeah, I would encourage people to go check out if you still have your Flickr account, I'd go dust it off and go back in there and see why you fell in love with it in the first place and use it. I am not paid to say that. I don't have to say anything about Flickr if I don't want to. It's not part of my agreement, right? Is to talk great about Flickr or SmugMug. But the reason I signed on with and align myself with both companies is because I believe in what they're doing and the
Yeah.
software is amazing. So yeah, definitely go check it out. It
I
doesn't
just
cost anything.
yeah,
Just go kick the tires.
they still do have the free plan. So I'm on the free plan. I haven't had a pro plan in a long time, but I just pulled up my profile. I've been a member of Flickr since August 2005.
Wow. Before me, right? See? And that
It's a
and you could have
long time.
yeah, and you could have canceled your account for whatever
Of course.
reasons. And a lot of people did, I think, because of the Flickr was a hot potato back in the day. It was first it was
Yeah.
independent and then it wasn't. It got bought by Flick or by
Yeah.
Yahoo and then they didn't know what to do with it and then Yahoo and fell on rough times and they sold that off to
Yeah.
Flickr off to Verizon. You know, all these
Yeah.
different things that happened. SmugMug just in their credit, right? And the folks that manage SmugMug. So
Mhm.
SmugMug looked at Flickr and I don't think they looked at it from the standpoint of, oh, we can take this thing and flip it and generate a gazillion dollars. Because if they
Oh,
were
yeah,
thinking
no,
that,
no.
yeah, if they were thinking
Right.
that, they could have probably done something similar to that by funneling the gazillion Flickr members into
Into
SmugMug.
SmugMug. Yeah,
They didn't do that.
yeah.
They didn't do
No.
that. And their reasoning, I'm told, was they love photography. SmugMug was one of the reasons I wanted to be part of that company. They genuinely love photography,
Yeah.
and they saw Flickr as part of photography history and
History.
lore,
Yep.
and they felt and all those images and just memories
Yeah.
that were just on the event horizon getting ready to be sucked into the black hole. So they were
Yeah.
like, let's save it
Yeah.
and make sure that it's going to be around for generations and generations through infrastructure and all the things that they did when they
Yeah.
bought it. So they modernized everything, bought it, or they bought it, then modernized
Yeah.
everything, put it on the correct servers and all that, and boom, and it's off into the races.
Yeah.
And speaking with them, I had a conversation with the CEO, and speaking with them, I said one of the fears is, yeah, it's going to go away. There's all these also rans out there. There's Instagram, there's Facebook, there's
Mm.
500px. The list goes on of people that are trying to get our images, notwithstanding Adobe and Apple and Microsoft and Google also trying to get our images. Why would I
Mhm.
put them on this service over here that was a hot potato and all that? So they explained that the without going into it exhaustively, but they explained that they have a commitment that Flickr is not going away. Flickr is going to
Yeah.
be around for our
Forever.
kids
Yeah.
and beyond our kids, and they've
Yeah.
taken steps to make sure that happens. When I
Right.
heard that, I was like, it's no, if for that alone, it is
Yeah.
a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about it, right?
At Imaging USA, I was lucky enough to sit in with a conversation with Ben, and he gave me the whole spiel, the whole
Mhm.
backstory
Oh, Ben
of
McCaskill? Yeah.
yeah, he gave
Mhm.
me the whole story about how the whole Flickr thing happened, and it not only is it fascinating, but it gives me even more respect for the team at SmugMug, everybody at SmugMug, for putting so much care into photography and what photographers have done for history, right?
That's right.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
I don't think you're gonna find a company with an executive team and a founding team that are more passionate. And I would go out on a limb. I very rarely make definitive pointed statements like this, but knowing those folks and knowing what they're doing, what they could have done, and how much money they could have made, right? And that they, despite all that sort of the cash grab that was right in front of them, they I argue that they did the right thing on the
Mm,
Flickr side and just on the management of the company side. The company has
yeah.
SmugMug has managed to remain private through all
Mhm.
these storms, through the photon torpedoes that have been shot at SmugMug are endless, right? Everything
Right.
from patent troll suits to infrastructure. You need
Yeah.
to make sure that's modern and humming along to advancing the platform while running photographers' businesses and making them money
Yeah.
and keeping the eye on the ball, which is the people that are customers of both of these companies, all three now, including This Week in Photo, are passionate photographers, right? And out inside baseball, one of the mission statements for SmugMug, Flickr, and now This Week in Photo is to make the world, and this is the quote, this it's on the wall, right? To
Mhm.
make the world a better place through the power of photography. That's the
Yeah.
mission. That's what
Yeah.
guides everything, is to make the world a better place through the power of photography. My mission
Yeah.
statement for This Week in Photo is and was to entertain, inspire, and educate. However you want to phrase those three things, depending on the
Yeah.
usage, but to entertain photographers, so entertainment, inspiration, and education. And
Yeah.
I've found over the years that when you mix those things together, you get magic because
Yeah.
photography fits right in there with that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but to throw the question at you, I wanted to throw at you is the company that you have hitched your wagon to over there. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. This could be a whole separate interview, but I wanted to just go into that world
Yeah.
of what Imagine is working on and
Mhm.
what your contribution is over there. I'm curious from a photographer standpoint, but then
Yeah.
also from a somebody that's in the industry that is working with companies that build great tools for photographers. What are you guys working on?
Yeah. Imagine 3 years ago started doing AI photo editing, right? We learned how photographers
Mhm.
edit in Lightroom Classic, and create what we call a personal AI profile. And then once that's made, it takes less than 24 hours. Once it's made, we can then edit super fast. We can edit 1,500 photos in less than 10 minutes. So, and it's only getting faster and better. We do a whole wide range of things, including subject mask, automation, and cropping and straightening, and do global edits. We do so much, and it definitely been saving photographers a ton of time. Months back, we also announced, and people have been testing our AI culling, our photo selection software. Where we're actually like analyzing the photos and determining, not saying like this is bad, this is good. We're basically just saying these are the ones that we suggest as your keepers. But we're still giving you everything, so you can still review everything to make sure that we're not overlooking something.
Yeah.
And that's been an ongoing thing. That's in beta. It's available to all paying customers right now.
Awesome.
So we've had editing, we've had culling, and what we're doing is we're basically bringing everything into what we are calling a workspace. This is basically representing natural evolution of our software solution, which streamlines every aspect of a photographer's post-production workflow. We've already started this process by integrating culling into editing. So somebody can upload their photos to us and have the culling done, and then review that in Lightroom, review that in Photo Mechanic, whatever you want, and then quickly, without re-uploading, just choose what you want to send off to editing. It's painless. So we've been weaving the science that we've been building into a photographer's workflow. And so we're basically, what we've got is this whole roadmap of post-production tasks that can be conquered in super fast lighting speed, precision, all using AI and automation,
Awesome.
and facilitating the ability to get post-production work done faster and safer, secure,
So that's it's
empowering
like
photographers,
that's
basically.
it
Yeah,
sounds like what we were talking about before, right? That's what technology
y-
is for. It's
yeah,
off of your plate so that you can presumably the thing that you love doing is shooting, right? As a photographer, or maybe it's post
yeah,
processing, I don't know. But for the most part, I think the common denominator for most photographers is we love taking photos, and the other part of it is we love sharing those photos, and everything in
yeah.
between that is has varying degrees of difficulty depending on where you find joy. But what I'm curious about from
Hmm.
your software standpoint is take who is it for? Is it for
Yeah.
event photographers? Is it for wedding photographers? Is it for headshot or portrait?
So
Who?
interesting. So when we originally came out, we originally created the software for wedding photographers, of course.
Mhm.
But as we've come to find, there's all sorts of photographers that are using Imagen. We've got sports photographers, we've got NASCAR photographers, literally
Sure.
NASCAR photographers. We have family portrait photographers. We have theater photographers that are using Imagen. So it really, a lot of headshot photographers, right? We've got the
Mhm.
wide range boudoir, you name it, they're using Imagen. So
Wow.
we are built for bulk photo editing in whatever capacity is needed. Bulk could be 5 photos at once. Bulk could be a million photos at once. It doesn't make a difference. We can handle as little or as much as needed. And it's just a matter of, right now we support Lightroom Classic. We are working towards supporting Capture One as well.
Mm.
But yeah, so
So take me
it's
through that just real quick. I know
yeah,
we're out of time, but I'm curious because
yeah.
I want to use the software, right? So if I'm shooting portraits, or let's say I'm doing a model shoot, right?
Yeah.
And we're taking photos on this Sacramento or whatever. I come back with my memory card. I'm shooting Nikon. I don't have camera to cloud, so I come back with my memory card, and at that point of ingestion is where it's going to go on my hard drives and get replicated and do all the things, and I'm going to bring it into Lightroom Classic. So currently, my flow would be okay. All right, I'm gonna sit down, got my glass of wine. Okay, import my photos. Let's
Yeah.
go and do a first
Mhm.
pass and basically find the photos that I feel like are worthy of me taking to the next level, i.e.,
Right.
working on cropping, adjusting, removing, etc. And that's basically where it goes. So I work on those, and then those go into a finished folder, and then I put them on SmugMug and send the person a link and
Mhm.
all the things. How does Imagen fit in that flow, in my
Yeah,
flow?
so
Like, where would
yeah,
I plug
so
you in?
what you would do is, you once you import into Lightroom, right? Before you even do anything else, right, to any reviewing of the photos, before your
Mhm.
first pass, you'd import into Lightroom, you would then open the Imagen app, and you would upload your that entire folder or the collection, whichever you work in, up to Imagen, and let it do the first pass for you. So what you're
From
doing is
from
the
within
second is
Lightroom or as a separate app? So
so it's a
outside of
separate app.
Lightroom, separate
It's
app.
a separate
Okay,
app.
yeah.
Yep, but it directly reads your catalog information, and you would literally send us the folder. We would upload smart previews if they exist. If they don't, we make our own temporary smart previews. We upload those. Our calling AI will analyze it, give you back the information. You would download it. If your Lightroom preferences have XMP turned on, XMPs will be made. If they don't, we'll just inject it into the database of Lightroom, and they'll show up anyway, either as stars or colors. So there's your first pass. You now go back to Lightroom,
Wow.
review the data. You can go through and make your second pass at this point. Now it's you doing it, right? You're getting back involved. We're letting you take it's your creativity. You don't need to, be totally hands off. Maybe one day
Mhm.
you will trust it, but right now you don't have to.
Yes.
And so you do your fine tuning of the coal, and then you go back to the Imagen app and say, okay, I've made my changes. Everything 5-star is what I want to edit. And now it re-uploads back the metadata just to see what was changed. Then that takes 2 seconds, just as a text file, and then it goes off to editing just the way that you would edit, and then again, in a couple minutes, it'll be done. You download it back to Lightroom, and you'd open up Lightroom and see them popping in.
Ready. So is the idea with Imagine to get me to help me with culling, of course, but and on the helping me with culling, is does it learn over time what I like based on what I've rejected and what I've kept? And
So
can I tweak it? So can I say personally, if I'm shooting a model session or something,
mhm,
I may favor towards my 85 mil lens and a blurry background, and I always want the nearest eye to be
right,
tack sharp focus. Those are three main
right.
things. Can it key on those?
So right now, it doesn't personalize culling. That is something that we will get to. Once we are happy with the overall output for majority of of the Imagine users,
Hmm.
at that point, once we're happy and we take it out of beta, now we can then turn on personalization, and then it'll learn from your needs. But we are holding
Sweet.
off on enabling personalization until we are happy with the general output of what it's
So
doing for everybody.
that's
But
so
the
cool.
editing is
Wow.
100% personalized. So editing wise, it will learn what it'll learn from what I like to say from A to Z. A being what you do in camera, and Z or Z being at the final edit. So it'll learn everything that you do and just do it for you.
So it's
And
an
again,
assistant.
it's not
It's an
to
assistant.
it yeah, it's all non-destructive in Lightroom still. So it's not you're not it doesn't have to be the end if you don't want it to be. You can still do blemish removal in Photoshop if you want. You can still do blemish removal in Lightroom if you want, or use portraiture or whatever it is. You can still keep going to further enhance the photo for your creative needs.
So it sounds like what I said earlier about how I used to use Flickr back in the day as like a crowdsourced culling tool to tell me what shots are great. Sounds like Imagine is doing that now. So I can upload my headshot shoot of actor ABC on the beach.
Mhm.
I can upload all those photos. It's going to initially go through and tell me which ones I should care about and work on based on smarts, and then apply some corrections to those selects at the end and then present those back to me. So now I have a starting point of really great images that are almost ready to go. Then I can go in and do some final cropping, or I want this like this, or I want to make this one for TikTok, whatever. So I can do all that stuff later, but it gets
Yeah.
me to the point where all these photos are good and all these photos are we've edited them to make sure that they are ready for you to add your special sauce to, right? Is
Yeah.
that accurate? Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah. So the culling and editing are two separate things. You can do one or the other, but it's part of
Mhm.
you could do it either separate or you could do it together. That's the whole thing we're going with this sort of integrated experience so that it's all one. And we're not ending there. We're going to be adding features to be able to send your final edit to your gallery automatically. So if you're hopefully at some point we're integrating with SmugMug and any other
Mhm.
potential gallery solution that wants to integrate, we'll be able to send it off to you. But also from the ingestion side of things
Yeah.
is part of this direction we're going is being able to be a photographer's additional disaster recovery solution. So right now, a lot of photographers are using SmugMug, for example, to back up all their JPEGs, right?
Yeah.
Because SmugMug makes it really easy to do, especially from Lightroom. So we're making it easy for photographers to also back up their raw files as they're going to upload for culling or editing we could back up your raw photos for you at the same time, right? It's also
And
the
where do those
direction we're going.
go? If I'm
So,
backing up my raw photos, where are they?
yeah.
Where those files live?
So that would go to the Imagen servers. So we've got,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so we have Amazon AWS servers that we
Yeah.
utilize, the super high production, secure servers. And yeah, nobody has access to them. They're very safe. Just like a Flickr or a SmugMug. They're in cloud servers and they're secured and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
it's
great. Yeah, SmugMug has a that I learned about relatively recently, a couple months ago. There's a service that SmugMug doesn't promote a whole lot. So this might be like a hacker insider tip. But if you look on SmugMug and you search for a feature called SmugMug Source,
yeah,
it will allow you to upload your raw images and store them on SmugMug in perpetuity,
right.
right? So
Hmm.
when I learned about that, along with all this Flickr stuff, when I learned about that, I was like, wait a minute, Backblaze? Yeah,
Yeah,
So basically, yeah, so I don't know that they want the word to be out there that widely, but yeah, it's totally possible to throw all your raws up there and have them accessible to you and not worry about, oh, I got to put a
yeah,
Drobo here or not Drobo
right.
or
That's the
Synology.
thing. Thing is disaster recovery is becoming even more important as
Yeah.
I feel like in many cases, consumer hardware is getting poorer and poorer in quality, right? Hard drives fail. Drobo went out of business. There's so many risks of having your raw files only in a local device and or on one cloud solution. To me, there was a time where I had SmugMug and I had Backblaze and I had
Hmm.
Dropbox and I have the more the better in my opinion, right? And
Right,
then have
right.
the JPEG somewhere else. You can't have too many if they're affordable. If cloud is in some cases for some people, cloud is more affordable and having these expensive NAS drives and all these additional hardware in your studio, in your house.
Yeah,
I'm
for
very
sure.
excited about the future of backups in everything because I feel like it's all headed in good directions and it's only in the photographer's benefit, which is the
No,
best part.
100%. Yeah, yeah, for me, I'm weird, but for me, I feel like everything you said is 100% true. Backups in the cloud on your servers on SmugMug, where,
Yeah.
anywhere but here, basically.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
want them to live and I want them to be accessible because I think what a lot of photographers are solving for is what if my house just implodes on itself and
Yeah.
falls into a poltergeist black hole or something, right?
Yep.
And all my
Well, you're in
computers are gone.
California. It could.
I I actually live in Cuesta Verde. I'm just saying. No, but what was that sound? But
Would.
yeah, totally, totally. But yeah, but we're solving for that. If something catastrophic like that happens, one of the things that we are going to be most stressed about is our photos and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
having it offsite in the cloud makes a ton of sense. But also, what I'm solving for is just being able to get stuff instantly. So, like for
Yeah.
me, I want local. I want everything,
Hmm.
all my stuff local, and I want to be able to access it. And
Yep.
that's mainly because what if a company goes out of business? What if a company gets
Yeah.
eaten by another company and that company doesn't think that part of the business is important and they shutter it? Now I got to scramble and figure out a solution, which is not to say that's going to happen to any of the companies we've mentioned, but paranoid Frederick and my photos,
Yeah.
I want local, but then
Yeah.
I want it in the cloud too on
The
these other
redundancy.
areas. The
Yeah. The
redundancy.
redundancy.
Yeah.
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 That's it.
Redundancy and access
Yeah.
and safety. My friend Alex Lindsay, who used to be on TWIP, was one of the founders of TWIP. He would say that data doesn't exist unless it exists in three locations simultaneously,
Yes.
which makes sense. So it needs to, or a photo, let's say a photo needs to be on your local drive here,
Yep.
on, like you said, on your Dropbox, or maybe at a friend's house. Maybe you guys are mirroring drives and doing that dance, or at
Yep.
grandma's or your parents or something. So there's another copy of it. And then there's a copy up there in the cloud
Yeah.
as well.
Yep.
So if something happens on Earth and those things go away, you still have your cloud backup. Something happens to the cloud backup, you have one of those. So you got the tripod of stability, which I think
Yeah.
is really important. I've lived by that since you said that. It's
Yep.
made sense to follow that
Yeah.
rule of thumb.
I've been using the 3-2-1 rule, which is very basically it's the same thing. But it's
Hmm.
spelled out as basically 3 backups, 2 of which are local, 1 is cloud. I've been looking at it more as at least 3 backups. I do have 2 local, but I would say 1 local at a minimum, 2 clouds because
Yeah.
again, clouds are safer in the long run, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's
hardware
scarier,
gets to be
safer.
expensive.
Yeah, you're right. It's safer, but depending on who you are and the volume of your
Yeah.
photography, part
Yes.
of the
Yes.
hard part could be getting your photos up there in the first place. So if you're shooting a gazillion images every weekend on weddings or whatever, and you're still
Yep.
trying to upload, you could never catch
Yeah.
up because
Yeah, I
you're
think that's
filling the
that's the
bucket
beauty.
faster than you can empty it. So
Yeah, but that's the beauty of how Imagen is doing it, is we're building it into the workflow. So when you're going to upload your 6,000 photos you shot at the wedding to Cole, right? Initially, we're backing up your raw photos at that point.
beautiful,
When you're not
beautiful.
uploading to Cole, it's backed up. Again, this is not yet. This is the future. This is what's coming. And then from there, you can go into edit, and again, your photos are still backed up. So if something
Yeah,
happens,
yeah,
so
it's important.
let's, yeah, definitely. To wrap things up, I want to just say from the Workflows podcast, the Imagen side of things, please definitely go and check out TWIP, This Week in Photo. Listen to all of Frederick's episodes. Check out the website, check out the community there. And that's what this is about. This is about introducing, for everybody who on the Imagen side who hasn't heard of This Week in Photo, to definitely go and check it out. I've known Frederick for a
Likewise.
long time.
A
So
long time, yeah, yeah, wow, yeah, it's been forever. Yeah, I think I had more hair back when we first met. Maybe a little
same.
bit, maybe a little bit. And I would throw it back at you as well for the folks in the This Week in Photo listening audience that are listening and watching this. You heard what we talked about with how Imagine kind of fits into the workflow of what you're doing, depending on what your genre is. Yeah, you can't not check it out. And one of the people behind the company, Scott here, they're genuine people doing genuine things that are genuinely in service of making the world a better place through the power of photography, right? And making your journey in photography a little bit easier, a little bit more pleasurable, using the tools correctly,
Mm,
using AI tools correctly to help you be better at what you're doing.
yeah,
Like in the case of Grammarly, I talked about in the beginning of the conversation, how Grammarly has helped me become a better writer because
yeah,
it's low key showing me what I'm doing wrong repetitively
yeah.
so that I'm fixing it as I go along.
Yep.
Same thing with what you guys are doing. I see parallels there. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And I'm always overexposing because it's always need to do. It's always pulling my exposure back a little bit. Maybe I should work on that.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things. So I would say partner, don't vilify AI and the technologies that the various tangents that AI is comprised of. Don't vilify it. Now is the time to be educated about it. Whether or not you're going to dive in and become a proponent of the technologies and all this stuff, but dive in and understand how this stuff works and how people are using it. On the bullish side, figure out how AI can make you a better photographer using software like Imagen, using the different tools that are available to you. Figure out what it is you want to be as a photographer and how these new technologies can now kickstart what you're trying to do. These are techs that Ansel Adams didn't have, right?
Mhm.
Yet he still managed to make great photos, right? And
Yep.
now you have all these cool things, whether it's the cameras, it's the software, it's the community, and all these things. Yeah, use them and don't be afraid of them. I saw and I don't know if you saw this ad campaign that Nikon put out, and I'm a Nikon shooter,
Yes.
so I'm pro
Yeah.
Nikon, right?
Yep.
So they put out this campaign on basically the gist of the campaign was don't give up on reality yet because everyone was doing this mid-journey stuff and yada, all these cool things. And
Mhm.
Nikon put out this, basically it was an ad campaign that showed, and I'll put it in the TWIP blog post as well. But the commercial that they put together, or the piece, was showing real locations, fantastical locations around the planet that Nikon photographers had captured, and then they
Yeah.
prompted them. So they wrote a prompt that you would have written to generate that kind of image, but of
Yeah.
course it was a real image, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was good. That was an interesting take on it. But at the end of it, they had a screen up that had, how they put the text on the screen, and they had a text on the screen that said, this campaign inspired hundreds of photographers to go out and shoot in reality, or something like that. And the first thing I thought was, only hundreds? It's only hundreds of photographers? For one, you look at Midjourney and Adobe and all these different companies that are springing up, millions and millions of
Yeah.
people are trying these things. So hundreds is a drop in the bucket. So I wouldn't have leaned into that if I were you, Nikon. And on the other side of it, I was thinking, why are you raging against the machine? Literally,
Mm,
why not change the narrative of the conversation to be something like, look at what these amazing Nikon photographers are doing with their amazing images that they shot with their Nikon cameras and then used AI to do these things with. So leaning into it instead of
mm,
trying to vilify it. I think vilifying the AI tech right now, where there's generative or large language models or whatever, is a losing
right.
battle. It's like trying to stuff the toothpaste back in the tube. It's not going.
Yeah.
You might as well just
Did
brush your teeth.
so I'm also a Nikon user, and I still love my Nikons, and I always will. But
Yeah.
did you notice that after that campaign came out, that a lot of the photos were sourced from Flickr and not for the campaign?
I did not see that.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling.
So it was a very clever campaign. I was like loving it as I watched the video, and then I saw the news about how it was literally like some of it was even Creative Commons, like
Yeah.
unpaid. So
That's
yeah.
so sad. That's interesting. That's the thing about Flickr, and one of the powers that people overlook that Nikon inadvertently leveraged, right? And that's the
Mhm.
fact that the metadata for the photos that you upload, if you choose it to
Oh,
be, but by
yeah,
default, the metadata for your photos, the focal length, the lens you use, the camera
yeah,
body you use, the exposure information, et
all
cetera,
that.
is all recorded and displayed beautifully with your photo
Searchable,
and
searchable.
searchable. Like Nikon did, you could say, you know
Yeah,
what? I want to see, what is the world shooting? What are people shooting with Nikon Z9s with the 50, with the
yeah.
50 mil lens, Nikon Z9s? What are they doing in San Francisco? Photographers shooting Nikon Z9s in San Francisco last
That's
month
Creative
only.
Commons available for commercial use.
That's creative column that I can use in my thing, right? So,
Yeah,
boom, there you go. So it's all there. So like the
yeah,
Flickr platform and SmugMug are built. It sounds cliche, but I'm gonna say it anyway. By photographers for photographers,
yeah,
and those are the things that photographers want, right? You want
yeah,
to. I see a beautiful picture that I would like to try and do something like that. Instantly, I want to know what you shot it with. Not so much the camera body, but what lens and exposure and all
yeah,
that other stuff. So I think
yeah.
one of the things Flickr may consider, I don't know if they're considering it now, but I know when I first joined the company, Flickr had spun up a whole new category to allow people that were generating video game photography to
Mm,
upload and categorize. So like in software or games like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? So beautiful game, open world game, has a feature in there where you could just wander around and pull out a virtual camera and take a photo of the scene. Turns out
right.
that's your photo. That is
Yeah,
now your photo. So you can take that photo and upload it to Flickr as your photo and it'll be categorized appropriately. So I'm thinking AI is probably next, right? To have something up
probably.
there that we
Yeah,
can flag it as if it's not already there, it may already be
yeah,
there. They're fast.
yeah,
Something that you can search for all the photos that were generated by AI or even a particular AI algorithm. Oh, this is
yeah.
from OpenAI, or not
Yeah,
OpenAI, but
yeah,
DALL-E. Yeah, this is
yeah.
from DALL-E, this is from Midjourney, this is
Yeah.
Firefly, whatever.
It's only a matter of time. It's
Yeah,
gotta go that direction for sure. But
absolutely.
um
Absolutely.
awesome. Let's wrap things up. Thank you, Frederick.
Yes.
This has been fantastic. I can't wait
We
to
gotta
get
do it
this
again.
episode out.
We will do
Everybody.
this again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
we'll have to talk about this as we edit the episode, but this might have to be a two-parter because this is a long one.
Yeah, yeah.
So
On TWIP, it'll be a one-parter because I'm going longer
okay.
with the episodes. Little news is, the way TWIP is gonna evolve over the
Mhm.
next couple of weeks is, you remember back in the day, TWIP was essentially roundtable discussions with
Mhm.
multiple photographers in the room discussing a
Yeah.
particular topic. So going back to that, which is inherently longer form, right? So we're
Mhm.
gonna move to that, but then also the one-on-one interviews will continue, so we'll have those on the feed as well. And now I'm adding on the short form side, the YouTube channel will start evolving into more small tidbits of information, whether it be a review of a particular piece of software like yours, or some piece of kit like a new lens or some new bobble
Yeah.
for the camera that came out. So we'll do short form product reviews, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so. We'll start going
Nice.
up on the YouTube channel. All that stuff represents the next evolution of TWIP, kind of regressing in one area, going
Mhm.
back to the roundtable, and
Mhm.
pressing forward in another area,
Yeah, but
embracing
that's the
YouTube.
diverse set of shows of, like, parts of the show. I think is great. I'm planning the similar things, not what you're doing, but, like, similar segments type of things for workflows as well.
Cool.
I'm gonna be the next one that's gonna be coming hopefully soon, shortly after this episode airs, is what we're calling Workflows Mentors, where we're gonna have one-on-one conversation with a mentee and a mentor talking about whatever they're
Oh, I
struggling with.
like that. I
Uh-huh.
like
You're
that.
not allowed to
Yeah.
steal that from me.
ChatGPT, give me words that are similar to mentors that I oh,
Yeah.
man, that's
So
awesome.
this has been
Yeah.
that's been a long thing in the works, but I can't wait till it's finally out there for
Yeah.
people
No, it's so much to
to
do.
enjoy. Because if
There's so
one
much
person
to
have a
do,
problem,
man.
yeah,
Love
this
it.
has been fantastic. I can't wait for this episode to air. On my side, on your side, it's gonna be great. Hopefully, we can do more of these in the future. Hopefully, people enjoy this crossover type of thing, and we can make it happen more.
Absolutely. I'm down, man. Yeah, just say the word and I'm there. This was a good time. And yeah, and if folks, if you want to connect with me, obviously I'm at thisweekinphoto.com is the podcast and all the good things. Hundreds, like I was saying, hundreds and hundreds of episodes up there with a ton of people from the industry. All corners of the industry are up there. So if you feel like listening to conversations similar to this about
Mhm.
various topics, just head over to thisweekinphoto.com for. But then also on if you're a pro photographer, definitely check out Smug Mug, which is my sister company. I can't say enough about how meticulous they are about caring for photographers' images and empowering photographers to, if they want to generate income from their photography, helping them do that. And then on the Flickr side, all the things we talked about, just the metadata piece, you owe it to yourself just to go over there, even if you don't sign
Yeah.
up, to poke around and explore and see what people are doing with your particular camera and
Yeah.
lens to get inspired. Oh crap, I didn't know I could do that, and then go out and shoot. So yeah, check it all out. Lots of stuff to look at.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, for on the Imagen side, if you are looking for somebody software that is going to help you with your post-production to speed things up, let you get back to going out and traveling and going out and spending time with family, which is on what I'm about to do when we stop recording, and
So
do whatever it is you want to do or do work on other things in your business, then check out Imagen. It's just imaginai.com. Um, you'll find the podcast there and all the other stuff. And again, you can try Imagen for free. You don't need to pay us to try us. So
love it.
yeah. So this has been fantastic. I'm just gonna hit stop. Here we go.
Yeah, yeah.
This is Twip.